Asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya, aviravirmayeti, rudrayatte takshinam mukham, tena mam pahi nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. The last verse we saw the previous week was about the power of knowledge. The verse 37 pointed out, O Arjuna, just as blazing fire reduces wood to ashes, so does the fire of knowledge reduce all karma to ashes. That karma is what is at the root, in some ways, of the kind of life we are experiencing now. Because karma involves the one who is doing karma. So the agent of action, that is every one of us, we do things, we feel we must do things. There is the expectation, there is the idea about duty, responsibility, what is expected of me, what I feel like doing. And all of these things which make me do things in the world, some of them work, some of them don't work. Some are successful, some are not. When things go well, I feel happy. When things don't go well, I feel miserable. And that's, in short, is the story of everyone's life. We go back and forth between joy and sorrow, sukha and dukkha, depending on things going right and things going wrong. And it is this going back and forth between joy and sorrow, it's what keeps us tied down to the kind of relative existence which is now kind of a default state of existence for us. The only way this can go away, the only way things will be perfect. Normally we do say, oh, how is this? Oh, it's perfect. Nothing is perfect. As long as we are suffering, as long as there is pain, as long as there is evil, as long as things that make us uncomfortable, things are far from perfect. But at the basis of all of this is the idea that I need to do things and I want to be happy. And because both of these statements, I need to do things or I am expected to do things and I need to be happy, has this personal pronoun I. And the problem is the understanding of this I. And at present, our understanding of this I is not correct. That's the Gita's premise. That who I think I am is a very deluded version of my understanding of myself. And because I don't understand myself well, I am stuck in this wheel of karma. And that ignorance of my true nature can go only through knowledge. Just as darkness can be removed only through light. Darkness cannot be removed. I can go take 26 laps around this whole area, but darkness won't go. It's not the activity that will remove darkness. Darkness can go only through light. In exactly in the same way, ignorance can go not through any actions, but through knowledge. So that same knowledge now is glorified and its importance explained in the set of verses we will see today. Let's look at verse 38. We are doing chapter 4. It's the concluding part of chapter 4. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram miha vidyate tatsvayam yogasam siddhaha kalenatmani vindati. In this world, there is indeed nothing as purifying as knowledge. In time, that knowledge is realized within oneself by one who has reached perfection in yoga. This phrase, Kalena Atmani Vindati, Swami Vivekananda used it very often. Often in his letters, he would quote this, Kalena Atmani Vindati, that to say that in time one will realize the truth. So what does in time mean? Is there any fixed time that is needed for us to realize the truth? And the answer is no, there is no fixed time. We can reduce the length of time it needed depending on the intensity of our practice and the real longing that we have to know the truth. That's the only that's what makes the difference. It's like going from, let's say, if I have to now walk from Kenmore Square to the public gardens, Boston Common, and we can ask, how much time does it take? First of all, you would say, well, how are you going? Are you flying there, taking a helicopter? Are you walking? Are you running? Because the time will depend on many factors. It's possible to kind of go with the pace at which an ant moves, and it's going to take a long time. A marathon runner, a sprinting can go and do it in a much smaller time. Exactly in the same way, if we want to advance and make progress in our spiritual life, it's entirely upon us. One is, how badly do I want enlightenment? Because the effort we put into something is directly proportional to how badly we need it. If we don't need it that much, if you're not that hungry, then we can keep on postponing our lunchtime. But if I'm dying with hunger, then I just would want it right away. So when we call ourselves devotees, and of course when we read in the life of Ramakrishna, he had the vision of God, and that many great saints have had that same experience, it's encouraging, it fills us with hope. And we'd say, well, one day I would like to have an experience like that myself. Now, which is that day I'm going to have it? How badly do I want it? Most of us find that we are just fine without God realization. We read in Sri Ramakrishna's life how at the end of the day, as the sun was about to set, he would feel that excruciating pain in his heart and feel, one more day has passed and I have not yet had the vision of the mother. When that kind of hunger for that higher truth fills our heart, then we will recognize the urgency of the situation. Then we will not, so you see, oftentimes when we are given a meditation practice and say, this is the mantra, now you repeat this mantra, it's extremely disappointing when the first question after that is, what is the minimum I have to do per day? Which is kind of good, at least so someone recognizes that is something I would like to do. But why minimum? And so that simply means I recognize this is something important, but I don't have too much time for it. There are a lot more other important things in my life I need to attend to, which is fine. But then let's not be under an illusion that, oh, I'm going to realize God immediately. No. First, you'll realize the more important things in your life, hopefully. And this it's just like sometimes when you either go to the South Station and that you're taking Amtrak somewhere, or you go to the airport. And usually the listings of the departure flights is based on the time they are about to leave. And as soon as the flight is boarded and it's left, then that line goes and all the other things move up. It's a little bit like that in our life. So we have got priorities in our life. I've got these 5, 3, 6, 7, 8 things to do. And those of us who like to think of ourselves as spiritual seekers have also spiritual attainment as one of the things in the list. The question is, it's first of all good that it is on the list. The next is, where is it on the list? Because if we have the list in terms of things that are important, then we say, well, where is attaining the truth in that list? Because it's only that thing that eventually we hope that this God realization might go somewhere up. And then it will become a more urgent thing. And then when that happens, there'll be greater intensity in my practice. When I pray, when I meditate, that will be a little bit different than on other times. And that is the meaning of in time. So that time is in our control. Perfection in yoga is reached means the purification. There are two things really. Through doing karma yoga, selfless activity, it purifies the heart. And when the heart is purified, then we attain enough clarity at that point to be able to then read these texts, understand the true meaning of a statement like Tattvamasi, or read the Gita, or read the Upanishads. What these texts are saying, how much of what these texts say do we understand? And here, it's not a choice between understanding and not understanding. Here it's the choice between the levels of understanding, if you like. A lot of these ancient texts, now we are, the original is in Sanskrit. We are all reading through translations. And well, the good translations in English are available. If we understand English, we get a sense of what is being said here. So we have some understanding. But if it's simply a knowledge of language that is helping me make sense, then it's a very, very superficial understanding. But then we find that as we start making an effort to live according to these teachings, to actually try to practice what the Gita is saying, and then you revisit these same verses, say after 3 months or 6 months or a year, we will begin to see a meaning into it that we did not see in our first reading. And so these books are not meant to be a single reading. Just read the Gita and say, okay, I've read it. Now the book needs to be recycled. It will be recycled only after I become enlightened. Because I need to keep reading over and over again, and I will see that as I evolve, as my practice deepens, I will begin to see layers of meaning I did not notice before. And that is what perfection in yoga means. So first, I need to be selfless. To the extent I am selfless, I will attain that clarity. To the extent I have clarity, I will understand the deeper layers of meaning. And that is when knowledge will come. And that knowledge, as this verse points out, is the most purifying thing. Because the basis of all impurities, ignorance, is removed through knowledge. Verse 39. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatparav sanyatendriyaha jnanam labdhva param shantim achirenadhikachati. The person with deep faith, commitment, and controlled senses attains knowledge. Having attained knowledge, the person at once attains supreme peace. So 3 things, basic things that are mentioned here that are required. First is deep faith, Shraddha. There is a lot that can be said on Shraddha. The simplest way to describe Shraddha, that deep faith, is a kind of a gut instinct, if you like, that that there is a higher reality. You think you can speak of that reality in a theistic way, that there is God, or you can speak it in a more abstract philosophical way, thinking there is this deeper, unchanging truth in my heart. In the midst of this constantly changing aspects of my personality, like the body and mind, there is something unchanging within me. Now, that something unchanging within, or the presence of God, cannot be proved the way we prove things in a laboratory, because it's not God is not something material, neither is the truth material. And yet modern science hasn't developed sufficiently sophisticated equipments yet to be able to see or measure the divine. Because in some sense, while science is great, modern science is great, but it is also limited to the extent that the existence of something is limited to what is measurable, what is quantifiable. If it can't be measured, if it can't be quantified, if it can't be caught up in any of the instruments that we have, then we say, well, it's only a matter of faith. And one instrument that generally is not often taken into consideration is this, well, the body, of course, nobody can deny the presence of the body, but the mind as an instrument to gauge the truth. And that often doesn't come in the way modern science thinks about, because it's a very subjective thing. Only I know what's going on in my mind. I have no idea what's going on in the mind of the person in front of me. And therefore, since material science always tends to be objective, there is a very little consideration given to the subjective elements in this. Now, to some extent, quantum mechanics, and if you go think about the observer and a participator, there is some acknowledgement that the subject in some way can alter the objective reality as it is seen. And there is some kind of a threshold of the mind at some point. But by and large, these things have remained separate. And so deep faith here means that even though we don't have any evidence to prove the existence of God or to prove the existence of the Atman, not only do we have not evidence to prove to somebody else, we have not had any experience of it ourselves. And yet, deep down somewhere we feel it is true. Now that is what is called deep faith. And we use the adjective deep only because the word faith, unfortunately, due to overuse, you could say, has kind of lost its weight, if you like. I mean, I say that because sometimes people say, oh, I have lost faith in this. So we use faith in a way as something that can be gained and something that can be lost. So long as faith is spoken of in that way, that's our kind of casual kind of faith that people have, and sometimes it becomes more, sometimes it becomes less, and sometimes it gets lost. But deep faith is something that once it comes, and if it is deep faith, it will never go away. And that's the word Shraddha. Although Shraddha sometimes does get translated as faith, it has to be distinguished from this rather temporary phases of faith that we have in many things in life. And so deep faith, second, is commitment By commitment is meant, usually commitment we make to ourselves. When we receive instructions from the teacher, or when we study a scripture and say, oh, this makes sense to me. This is something, this is how I would like to think. This is how I would like to practice. Now, that's a good intention. But to put that intention into practice, how much we can keep up the practice will depend on how committed we are. And I remember, and I probably this is a more universal experience, probably. I remember when I was a student, I was a teenager, it was one of the most favorite pastimes was to create a routine for myself. Oh, this is what I would like to do. Wake up at this time, do this exercise, do this, do this. Just making that plan itself was you just felt good about it. And then maybe you can then say, the next day you do it, and maybe 2 days and 3 days. It's easy to make plans, easy to kind of keep them up for some time. The most difficult part is to then stick to it. And that's where the tatparaha is the Sanskrit word in the verse here. And that means being committed to it. Now, if it's something imposed from outside, then one might resist and say, why should anyone tell me what I should do? But if it's something that I have decided for myself, so it's a commitment I make to myself that this is something important to me, this is what I'm going to do. And this is important. If I say that this is what I'm going to do, I better do it. If I'm not sure, then it's better not to say I'm going to do it. One of a friend told me some years ago that we had a devotee here several years ago, and one of the things, she was a dog trainer, and so she had oftentimes at least 7, 8, 9 dogs at her home. So one of our devotees had gone to, so she had become quite elderly, and so she needed help in getting a ride to the Vedanta center. So this devotee had gone to pick her up for the Sunday morning service. And so she was getting ready, and there were all these 4 or 5 dogs whom she was training. And so he's just sitting there, and what do you do to pass time? He just looked at one dog who was just standing in front and wagging his tail. So he looked at the dog and said, sit down. And of course the dog didn't sit. But this trainer, she heard him say that. But then she had got her ready, and he said, okay, come on, let's go. And she said, no, now we can't go. Now you have asked the dog to sit down. We will not go until the dog sits down. Because that's the part of training. If you're told something, you've got to do it. You cannot get away with not doing it. Because if the dog learns that something is told and I can do it or I not do it, then you will never be able to train the dog. And so finally they waited, and luckily after she came, the dog did sit down. And that's important. We might think, but actually it does shape, or the way of disciplining oneself is that to say that if I make a commitment to myself, if I say I'm going to do it, I should do it. Because if I don't do that, then I will get used to making promises to myself and never keeping them. And if I do that to myself, I'll then begin doing that to others. Then my words will have no value. Because people will say, oh, this person says it but never does it. So commitment is a very important quality, especially in spiritual life. So we have to be very mindful, very vigilant. The moment we give a word, then it must be kept. And if you are not sure of keeping the word, don't make that commitment. And so that's the second quality. Deep faith, commitment, and controlled senses. Sanyata indriyaha. Sanyata means control, indriya is senses. So a person with deep faith, commitment, and controlled senses attains knowledge. So to get that knowledge, to make progress in spiritual life, these three qualities are essential. Deep faith, commitment, and self-control. Having attained knowledge, the person at once attains supreme peace. My supreme peace is really meant here moksha, spiritual freedom or mukti. Sometimes for many of the prayers that we do, we end with these three shantis. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And the question can be, why three times? Is it just because it's important, or why three times? And so the texts point out that there are three sources of pain or suffering in life. And one, they call it is dukkha, is suffering and pain. Adhyatmika dukkha. Adhyatmika means that which comes from one's own body and mind. And so physical pains and aches and illness sometimes can be painful, and that suffering can be very painful. And so freedom from that kind of a pain associated with one's own body and mind, that is the first shanti is for that. The second shanti is called the pain that comes from adhidaivika. Adhidaivika means factors beyond our control. Oh, there is this a hurricane or an earthquake or a tsunami. People just call it natural calamities. Now, we know there is a lot of destruction occurs, lot of damage occurs, and people suffer because of these things. So the second shanti is to seek that peace and freedom from pain and suffering caused by these natural causes. And a third is called adhibhautika. Adhibhautika means the pain and suffering that comes from others around us. That could be in the Jurassic age, that could be from the T-Rexes, the dinosaurs wandering around everywhere. Nowadays, we might think the dinosaurs have gone, the wild animals have gone. No, they are no longer in their original forms. They have now taken human forms. And so, pain and suffering caused by people and factors outside, which is quite a lot of suffering. And so the third shanti is for that. So there is a reason why these three shantis are given. And so the supreme peace, the word in the Sanskrit is param shantim, this not just ordinary shanti. The supreme peace really here means moksha. And only right perception of oneself as the Atman can give to that moksha, and that is that knowledge. Seeing myself as a mortal human being is a deluded understanding of oneself. The right understanding of myself in theistic language would be myself as connected with the divine, me as a child of God, me as a servant of God, as a devotee. That's a higher understanding, a better understanding. Or in the language of the Upanishads, me as the Atman, different from the body, mind, and ego. And both are equally effective. Neither one is more right than the other. But detaching ourselves, seeing ourselves as something more than just this flesh and blood personality. I'm not just this. I'm much bigger, I'm much deeper, I'm much more profound than just this human frame. Awareness of that is the starting point of knowledge. Verse 40. Ajñascha shraddhadhanascha samshayatma vinashyati, nayam lokosti na paro, na sukham samshayatmanaha. One who is ignorant and without deep faith and also filled with doubts is destroyed. The doubting person has neither this world nor the next nor happiness. So, one who is ignorant here means ignorant of the truth, ignorant of the Atman. One without deep faith, we have seen already that without Shraddha, with faith in oneself, faith in the scriptures, faith in the teachings of the great ones, is filled with doubts. Filled with doubts. Now, of course, it's not as if having a doubt is some kind of a crime or anything. We all have doubts. But to be unsure and suspicious about everything, that's a problem. Sure, when you read some text, something doesn't make sense, we might say, does it mean this or does it mean that? We might have questions, we might have doubts. Those doubts are fine. But to doubt everything, to be suspicious about everything in life, we can't live, we can't survive. And that's what is said here, that such a person is destroyed. Samshayatma vinashyati. So the idea is being ignorant and not having deep faith is bad enough, but it really becomes terrible if one becomes suspicious about everything. And that is one question we can ask ourselves. Is there anything in my life that I believe totally? Is there anything I can be sure about in my life? We may not have evidence for it, we may not have any proof for it. But is there something, because it's really sad and tragic if we are not able to think of even one thing in my life that is kind of a safe haven for me, is something that is an anchor, something that I can hold on to. If there is nothing like that, if I'm like, who knows, if I'm suspicious, or if I'm like, I do not know, then it's like being caught in a hurricane with these winds, 150 miles, 200 miles velocity, winds coming, and have nowhere to take any shelter. And of course, such a person is going to be destroyed. So we need some anchor. And that's what is said here about. Because without that, such a person is not even fit for this world, this material world, what to speak about the other world. How can we be happy? And so this gives us a chance to then look in our heart and say, do I have any values or principles? Even though I may not have been able to live up to them yet, but it's something I cherish, something that I instinctively know is right, is true. We need something in that. Otherwise, we'll be suspicious about everything. We'll keep on doubting everything. Then you can't go to a restaurant and order anything, because when they give food and say, I don't know, there may be poison in it. Because you go to take a glass of water and say, no, who knows? There may be some bacteria in it. You keep on doubting, keep on suspecting, life would be impossible. And so we have to see, yes, there is a place for doubts in life, but the nature of the doubts and what those doubts are meant for makes a big difference. Verse 41. Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana sanchinna samshayam atmavantam na karmani nibadhanti dhananjaya. Karma does not bind the person who has given up work through yoga and poised in the Atman, whose doubts have been dispelled through knowledge. Given up work through yoga means whose heart is purified through yoga. Now, although these texts will send, this is a literal translation, giving up work, the implied meaning is not that they don't work, they don't feel that I am working. Because we see all of these enlightened ones, they did a lot more work than any of us do. Swami Vivekananda's public life was less than 9 years. Within 9 years, what he achieved and what he did, even now, after 100 years, we are still trying to figure out the profundity and the implication of what he said and did. So he did a lot of things. So what does it mean when you say a person who gives up work? Giving up that agency of action. Now, everything we do with the awareness, I'm doing it. This is my work. In fact, if it's not acknowledged, I do something and nobody acknowledges it, I feel offended. It's like I did it and nobody gives me credit for it. Nobody recognizes I did it. The Upanishad and the Gita are telling just the opposite. That every time I feel I did it, I didn't do anything. That the truth is, all actions occur in the physical world, and it's these physical entities acting and interacting upon each other. That's what this earlier verse pointed out. Guna guneshu vartante. It's these different gunas acting and interacting upon each other. And I often give that example. It's simple. If I suppose this is a book, and I'm holding and I'm reading the book, and I can say, this is an action. I'm doing work. I'm reading a book. But if we analyze this, what does I'm reading a book means? Well, there is this, imagine it's a book. Well, it is a kind of an e-book. It's made up of material particles. It's being held in this hand. Hand is a material object. We know its chemical composition of the human body. It's also made of atoms and molecules and being read by these eyes, then the brain. You go through the entire mechanism of seeing, reading, understanding, and all of that. It's just material particles acting and interacting with each other. And yet, through all of these interactions, my thing is, I am reading a book. That's an illusion. All that I can say is, I'm a conscious presence here, watching, seeing, or being aware that these eyes are reading these words on this book. That's the reality. The illusion is, I am reading it. And therefore, no work is being done. It's just the action and interaction occurring between material particles. And that's what an enlightened being sees. And that's what giving up work means. Not that the work is stopped, but the enlightened being gives up the agency of action. So giving up work through yoga, that is a heart purified through karma yoga, now fit for that knowledge. Poised in the Atman, whose doubts have been dispelled through knowledge. So knowledge of oneness, the knowledge that I am not this little being, that I am this infinite reality. That knowledge will remove all doubts and gives us that highest truth. And it says, such a person, karma does not bind the person. In other words, karma will not yield the fruit. All karma leads to joy and sorrow, as we saw. This person who is enlightened, the karma will stop leading to joy and sorrow. You attain to that higher peace that we spoke about earlier. Verse 42. Tasmat ajnana sambhutam ritstham jnanasinatmanaha chitvainam samshayam yogam atishthotishta bharata. Therefore, slash this doubt about the self which is residing in your heart with the sword of knowledge and take refuge in yoga. Arise, O Bharata. This doubt about the self, because it can be removed only by the self, not by someone else. You see, any intellectual doubt that we might have, oh, this text, does it mean this or does it mean that? somebody else can help me remove that doubt. But the doubt about who I am, whether I'm this human mortal creature or I'm this divine Atman, intellectual doubts can be removed. But the experiential part of it, we have to experience it ourselves. It's like if you're given, let's say, a cup of coffee, and then someone say, I have a doubt. Is it tasty or not tasty? Is it delicious or not delicious? Or if you have the doubt, maybe somebody else will say, oh, it is delicious. So you have some knowledge, but then whether it's actually delicious or not, for you, the only way to know is you can't say, you taste it and tell me it's delicious or not. I have to taste it myself. And that's what is meant by saying this doubt about the self. Residing in your heart means it's not simply an intellectual doubt. It is deep within you. Sword of knowledge means the direct experience of truth itself, and that itself is the sword. Take refuge in yoga means karma yoga because it leads to purity of heart and then to jnana. And ultimately he says, arise and do your duty. And in this instance, remember the historical context of the Gita. In this instance, Arjuna's duty is to fight the war. And so do your duty here, because that's how this whole teaching began. Arjuna saying, this is not something I don't know what is the right thing for me to do in this situation. So after giving this teaching, Krishna tells Arjuna, what you need is knowledge. But to get knowledge, you need clarity. To get clarity, you need to do selfless activity. And selfless activity means doing your duty without seeking your own self-interest. And right now, in this juncture, your duty is to fight this war. This is the just war. You should do it not with the ambition to get the kingdom, not with revenge, not with anger, but just the idea that this is the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it. And with this, we come to the end of chapter 4. So we will begin with chapter 5 next week. But if you have whatever doubts you have related to chapter 4, this is your chance.
Hariom Swamiji. Swamiji, what are the steps we can take to develop deep faith?
So, deep faith is already present in the heart of all. And we need to just remove the words that often get used in the text is called impurities, really meaning the more I'm able to eliminate selfishness from my heart, the more I hold on to qualities such as honesty, truthfulness, then these layers which hide this faith which is already present in my heart, these layers will go away. And so deep faith is present in everyone, but it can be covered. It's not something like, sometimes we think actually all of these qualities essential for spiritual life, they're not like floating somewhere that I need to kind of pick them and put them inside. They're already inside us. Inside, they're already present. But if I don't feel it now, it's because they are covered. And I just have to remove the layers. And those layers are often these negativities that have developed in our life through selfishness, through anger, through hatred. When the more I'm able to remove these treasures hidden in my own heart will become available to us. Yeah.
Maharaj, about removing the layers over deep faith, Swami Vivekananda said, a time we will realize the truth. That means in Kali, right? So, when Thakur came, at that time Satya Yug has started. This is, I thought also. maybe. Then Satyayug would be for millions of years. Possibly, we people, those who are still having the layers over deep faith, maybe in those 15 years, 50 million years, we might be getting moksha also. Possibly.
Well, it will be great if it happens. But yeah, please sit down. I think, so there is this statement that Swami Vivekananda made that Satya Yuga started the moment of the birth of Sri Ramakrishna. Now, traditionally in these texts, they speak about these four eras, if you like. So there is Satya Yuga, the golden age, which is said like everything was perfect then. And then after that came Treta Yuga and Ramayana, story of Rama. Rama was born in Treta Yuga. After that came what is called Dwapara Yuga, that is when Krishna was born. And now we are in Kali Yuga. The texts sometimes use the symbol of a cow standing on all her four legs. And that was the cow in the golden age, in Satya Yuga. And then one of the legs of the cow kind of got infected or something. And so the cow then was managing to stand on only three legs. And that was in Treta Yuga, which is kind of a little bit of a degeneration from the golden age. Then one more leg got infected. The cow was somehow balancing on two legs in Dwapara Yuga. And then one more leg got infected. And so now cow is barely managing on one leg. So it's kind of a degeneration that occurs over time. What is not clear is how does the wheel now go? Kali Yuga, if it's supposedly the lowest and the most degenerate era, then what comes next? Is it again Dwapara, Treta and Golden, or immediately after Kali Yuga, Golden Age will come? And then of course there is the statement like the Golden Age was started from the birth of an avatara. Actually, if you see the description of Krishna's life, so Krishna was in this Dwapara Yuga, and they say, when did Kali Yuga start? Kali Yuga started immediately after the death of Krishna. So Krishna died and Kali Yuga started, which really makes no sense in some ways, because well, Krishna is a great avatara who came and who infused this dharma, and instead of the wheel going up, this kind of got further degeneration. And so thinking about these eras in an objective way lands us into great difficulties. But it may be possible to think about it in a subjective way. And that would be a closer to the Vedantic approach to things. Because Vedanta actually even questions the existence of the objective world. And therefore, it will be possible to think about these eras, the yugas, in a subjective way. And that is, when Sri Ramakrishna was born, the Satya Yuga started means Sri Ramakrishna lived in Satya Yuga. Because there was Satya Yuga. Inside he was so pure and free from any limitation. So as far as there was Satya Yuga inside him, and therefore because Satya Yuga inside him, what he saw outside was just the blissful Divine Mother. So what we see outside is the reflection of what is going on inside. And so Kali Yuga is not outside. Kali Yuga is inside. To the extent I'm able to purify myself, the moment I hold on to truth, the kind of qualities we read about that were present in Satya Yuga, the more those qualities become manifest in my own life, then I will be in Satya Yuga. So, this, I mean, one would take to connect it with Swami Vivekananda's statement that when Sri Ramakrishna will be born in my heart, Satya Yoga will begin for me in my heart. And again, Ramakrishna is just a kind of a placeholder here. Again, the devotees of Krishna can say, when Krishna is born in my heart, when Jesus is born in my heart, when any of these divine beings, I begin to feel their presence within me, then I will be in Satya Yoga. That is a little bit easier to reconcile with the statement, because objectively, every book will say different. These many millions of years this yoga lasted. There's no proof or anything, evidence about it. You just accept it or don't accept it. Yeah. So that would be my approach to it. Yeah. Yeah. Any other doubts? Yes. Yes.
Swamiji, can one truly love God without loving all of his or her creation?
Yes, good question. I would think that the more I'm able to love God, the easier it will be to love God's creation. Because I think the more our love for everything else is routed through God, that love will be more enriching. A love that bypasses God can be very limiting. I think a love that I would like to say that a love in which God has no place is more an attachment that can be binding. But if love goes through God, then even an attachment can be transformed into love, if God plays a role in it somewhere. Yeah.
Namaskar, Swamiji. So, just a little question about the three Shantis that you explained, their meaning. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shantihi. The first one was our own miseries. The second one is calamities, and the third one, the other human mankind. Just one other kind of, I should say, dukkha or difficulty that happens in life is a pain of a very dear one. Where would that category, I don't know where it will fall. It's just a small question.
It's adhyatmika, because again, pain is something I'm feeling in my own heart.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the first kind of Shanti. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, so when we begin meet next Wednesday, we will start with chapter 5. So bring your copy of the Gita and make sure chapter 5 is present in that book. So we will begin that next week. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu.